There aren't very many commanders on the planet that would have pushed back and said no to the general. You have to, like everything, have exception management and know when to say yes and when to say no. That's what I was paid for, is to have what's called judgment. We have to not be afraid to take a stance and do what we think is right, even when it's really hard.
There was a number of really eye-opening stories from your SEALs days. There was a couple stories in there which I thought were very interesting, kind of like showing your personal kind of growth as an individual, right? You had a couple stories in there where you had two commanders that were ordering you to do something. In both scenarios, you felt that you were reticent about it. And in the first time around, you didn't push back hard enough, right? And in the second one, you did. What were those two stories? How would you kind of summarize them? I think you know the ones I'm talking about. And how does that relate back to these never enough principles?
Phenomenally. It's so clear that you've read the story, the book very well. When I was a young SEAL, age 25 or 26, I was in charge of a SEAL platoon. Myself and 5 others were doing special reconnaissance in 1997 in Bosnia, Kosovo kind of operating area. And the very quick version is that we were in a situation that where we should have called a mission. We saw something, we got pictures of it, we completed our mission, we should have come out of the field. And there's a mantra in the SEALs that I learned from people older and wiser than me as I came in that says, if you think you've been compromised, assume you have. And if you have, then exfil. That means exfiltrate and come home. Well, we got told to stay in the field, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is not what we're supposed to be doing. And it was not a SEAL who was overall in charge, and it was a question of whether this young man at 26 pushes back or not. I ultimately didn't push back, and we had 19 armed people come hunting us, and it could have turned out a lot worse. None of the 6 of us got a scratch. We finished the mission fine, but man alive, it could have turned out much, much, much different. And so then roll the clock forward until 2012 in Afghanistan, when I was the commanding officer of SEAL Team 2, 15 years later. And so I was in a situation where a platoon of SEALs and Green Berets collectively were, in my opinion, better off canceling a mission and coming home. So I canceled it. It was 24 hours into a 72-hour mission. I won't get into the conditions on the ground or anything like that, but the risk became unnecessary to assume. And said differently, the outcome that this group was going to achieve wasn't worth the risk that they were going to have to take to achieve it. And when this group came home, they were frustrated. They're like, what in the world is, we're supposed to be these, hard and heavy, SEALs and Green Berets, and we do the hard things. And that's what being older and wiser and being a commander is about, is that you've learned things when you're younger, and they inform your decisions as you get older. So, and that's ultimately, like you said, what the book is about, is I've bumped through many things that I could have or would have done differently. And that's what I'm really passionate about sharing, and what I hope, Alex, came through in the book.
Doing the hard thing is how you win, how you grow, and how you end up getting the most out of life. Right. And I think that was the thing, in that second mission in 2012, that was a colonel or a general that you were ultimately having to disobey his order. Right. And that was that harder path.
That's even a different story than the one I was just telling. So it happened multiple times. And so the one you're talking about was a mission where I was the final person to decide whether we drop a bomb on buildings or enemy. And that's, the SEALs mission is ultimately to stop bad people from doing bad things to good people. Not, and so on this particular evening, we ended up being very successful kinetically and stopping bad people from doing bad things to good people. And the general said, hey, okay, now you need to go drive in your vehicles and go make sure that no innocent bystanders got killed. And I was like, that's stupid. Like, it was 3 a.m. We know the area. We know that it just was the dumbest thing that could possibly be applied. The macro policy is great. Let's dissuade people from making sure that they do stupid things. I'm all for that. But you have to, like everything, have exception management and know when to say yes and when to say no. That's what I was paid for, is to have what's called judgment, which we all know. So in this particular instance, I said, nope, we're not doing it. We're not going to get in our vehicles and go over these roads. It's not smart. The general, to cut to the chase, again, spoiler alert for the book, but there's so much other stuff in the book. But the general said, no, okay, I'll send my Afghan counterpart and ask him to go in and check it out. The Afghans went down to this place, the 3 vehicles. One of them hit an IED, and one vehicle got basically vaporized, and a couple folks died. And then the second vehicle had some people get very badly wounded. All Afghans, no Americans. There were no Americans there because of my decision. And I'll tell you, Alex, one of the most emotionally powerful days that I've ever had was flying to that site 24 or 48 hours later with that Green Beret team that was awesome, amazing Americans, and just sitting down and saying, walking in with them and having silence in the beginning. And one of those guys said, hey, sir, there aren't very many commanders on the planet that would have pushed back and said no to the general. And out of the 16 of us, 8 of us, at least 4 of us, probably 8 of us would not be here today if you didn't make the decision you made. We thank you. And I tell you, it even closes off the back of my throat right now talking to you, Alex. It's indescribably powerful. And that's where when I look at why do things like that happen, we have to not be afraid to take a stance and do what we think is right, even when it's really hard.
Hi, this is Alex from Winner Take All. Thanks for joining us. Hope you enjoyed the content. Feel free to leave a comment, ask us questions, and definitely make sure to join us on our next live stream.